Howdy, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have a new guest, Mr. Vinny. We're going to talk all sorts of things from training to like ages between like the kiddos all the way to professional athletes, what it looks like owning a gym or being operated around a gym and living the life of a coach. So thank you, Vinny, for coming on in.
Of course. Appreciate you for having me, man.
Yeah, man. What was your journey to start? Like, how did you get started in the coaching world?
Honestly, injuries. That's what got me into coaching. I was a pro athlete, so to speak. During that time that I was trying to become a pro athlete as well, like I was building up this like experience of all these coaches that were teaching me things, and I wanted to learn more because I didn't have access to them 24/7. So I had to start learning myself. I was lucky enough to have phenomenal coaches. It got to the point where I ended up coaching like high school and youth more because that's the easiest route to get into. And then obviously having some pro workouts and this and that, I got to meet pro guys, and then they ended up doing workouts with me, and they ended up getting experience through that. And then eventually I just did it like full time for the most part. And I've been doing it for about 7-8 years, give or take. And then full time, like almost head in for about like 5 years full on. Like that was like my bread and butter and still is. And I think it always will be. I mean, coaching is, I think, one of the best things to do.
I think so too. It's a hard thing to do, and I feel like the fact that you're doing it full time is rare. Like the more that you're in this industry, you realize that not a lot of people end up as an independent making it in this business. Yeah. It's rough. You said like like moderately professional athlete. What were you training?
So for my whole life, I thought I was going to be a professional soccer player.
Cool.
From 3 years old until I was 17, I got scouted to go to Europe. Ended up kind of messing up some parts on my body. Then I ended up having like political things where like I couldn't pay for like certain clubs to play out here. So I just stopped. Going into my senior year, I had nothing else to do. So I went up to the football coach who was trying to get me to be the kicker for probably 5 or 6 years since I was in middle school. And I was like, I ain't playing that sport. It's a stupid sport. I ended up kicking for them my senior year, all state, all blah, blah, blah. Got to college, had a lot of scholarships, ended up coming back to Vegas for the most part. Tried out for I was trying out for UNLV. I kind of got screwed in that aspect, just like a lot of like kids do, just through the system, coaches changing, you don't get to play. And I was done with the sport, and I was like confused. I had a coach hit me up asking me to help him run a camp. So a lot of people don't know this, that kickers, punters, long snappers, we don't get invited to combines like that. And honestly, if you watch them during the combine, it's stupid for us. So we have our own specialist combines on the off season that the coaches will go evaluate free agents, seniors. I helped run one, but I was warming up. Some of the guys and one of the coaches from the Chargers thought I was still eligible. That's eventually how that ended up working out. So I randomly got picked up for some workouts, bounced around, had 6 NFL workouts. Never got signed, so I don't count myself as a pro athlete on that aspect. Ended up playing rugby. Played that for most of my, I guess, college in the off season because my coach wouldn't let me hit, so I had to go find a rugby team to let me like tackle. Had tryouts with Legion, which is out here still in the MLR. And then the Glendale Raptors, that was the team that I ended up signing for. Now they're, I think, called the American Raptors, so it's a little bit different team. So yeah, that's technically where I guess I could say I played something professionally. And then by that time, I was going to try out for a USL team. That was when it was starting to blow up, but my back was just shot completely, and I had some herniated discs, and I was just like, I think I'm just done trying to be the athlete. I'd rather help these athletes.
What is USL?
USL is like our lower division, like for MLS, which is Major League Soccer. So it's like our lower tier teams. It's still professionally, just like how they have in Europe. I mean, Europe has like 5 tiers down below their major leagues. We only have about 1. We have about, I think, like 2 now coming in. We also have the women's league, obviously, and then the women's lower league. So the sport's growing here, and it's hopefully not going to become a money-driven thing, but just like the UFL with football, like I think everybody's starting to realize they need those lower divisions. Otherwise, we lose a lot of talent overseas in every sport. But yeah, that's, I guess, where you could say I was a professional athlete for the most part. And then, yeah, I just coached around them now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like the dream of a lot of coaches is to be able to like work with professional athletes, and they don't realize like that's such a small niche of coaches.
Yeah.
There's only very, very few.
Very few. And I've been lucky enough to be around some in the weird sports like CrossFit, powerlifting, like the sports that people don't think that they're sports, but they are. It's just a sport without a ball. In my opinion, anything professionally it's awesome. Like it's obviously you might not respect it, but it's a skill to be professionally at something. So obviously people have different outlooks. I'm really open-minded with that stuff though.
I think people give like weightlifting, powerlifting, or like, they're moderately sports, or like track sports, or kind of just like they're not associated with sport. But I mean, I don't know. It takes a lot of time and effort, and you do it professionally. People get paid to do it. Maybe it's not the $1 billion industry that football is, but there's still quite a bit of funding that goes through those organizations. Yeah,
no, and that's the thing is like a lot of those powerlifting strongmen, like you can incorporate those movements and things into our complex sports as well. You might not have to lift an Atlas stone, but again, you're picking something up, carrying something, farmers carry. A lot of athletes do that. Like, I mean, people overthink that like you can't incorporate and mix these sports, but in reality, that's how sports got created is you just took it from another one. It's movement is movement. And that's where the complexity of like what I do with the multi-sport athletes, like I don't train them all like, oh, you're a football player, I'm going to train you how, quote unquote, on stats looks like football. I train my football, soccer, rugby, all the same. Obviously, different aspects. I don't do the whole, like, just because you play soccer, you're never going to lift a weight or do any resistance. I'm not that type of soccer strength coach. A lot of them are, and it really pisses me off. And it's a stigma that I've been trying to break down that soccer players need to lift. And the ones that I have and the ones that do, they have better performance. So, and it's not just me. Other guys that have taught me that, those guys have better performance as well. So I have 2 tennis players as well, and they lift. It took a while to get them into it, but they've had less injuries, which is the most important thing. And then they're getting jacked because they're in high school, so they all want to look good. They don't understand that aesthetics does not equal athletics. So once they can max both, they ended up doing more drills that they can, and they fall in love with it, which is, I think, the main goal, because you're not going to be able to play your sport for 50 years. Like, you're going to have to stop at some point and be healthy in some way and get some movement. So that's my philosophy with that, though.
I think that the sports of weightlifting and powerlifting are the fundamentals of all sports. Yes. Like, everybody should be doing all the squat, the bench, the deadlift, and then all the variations associated with those things, all the accessories associated with those things, as well as our like very dramatic power movements on the other side being weightlifting. Like, the reduced risk of injury is probably the best thing, especially in soccer, where there's like an insane, like, I didn't realize in soccer, I think it was specifically female soccer, but in soccer, there are the most concussions of any sports ever. And I was like, they're
tough there though. They also don't dive. The women's sports specifically, especially in soccer, they'll punch each other. They don't dive. They go in for blood. Guys, they're rolling around on the ground. But again, realistically, the guys statistically are obviously stronger, but you would think that like they would be tougher in that aspect. But I think it's just the stigma of that sport. Why also people look down on it. And same with like girls rugby, like they're tough. Like they are, and anybody that plays rugby, you got to be tough. But like those girls are like, they want to hurt the other girl. And I love it because it's just about the sport. It's not about their genetics or anything like that. They just want to play. And the one that's going famous is Alana Mayer right now. Again, she can probably handle a lot of grown men because she doesn't care. She just wants to play the sport and play it safe. But that's why I like dealing with girl athletes too, because they have a different mentality in the gym, and they understand that they have a high risk of injury, especially soccer and rugby. Torn ACL is probably the most common one.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is there's so many statistics of these girls like thinking that it happens in high school and college, that they develop these imbalances, and it's actually youth development. And I think a lot of coaches, they go too hard, or they make all these like cool Instagram looking videos that youth that they don't need to be doing. They need foundational strength. And my job, like I said, with dealing with these girls is making them as stably strong as I can to lower that risk of happening. Because it can just happen off a twist. It doesn't have to be an impact. And you see the performance that these girls are playing now in the NWSL or even the international, like they're so good, like compared to what they were in the 90s and 80s. But again, that's the science behind it. And I think people understand, and like, no such thing as like a girl way to train, a guy way to train. Like, I make sure all my athletes don't call girl push-ups, the ones on your knees, girl push-ups. There's no such thing as a girl push-up or girl anything in the gym.
Correct.
So
That's a fact. It is a variation of a push up, right? If you can't do a full push up, then this is our half push up or whatever. But it's not a girl push up.
Nope.
I've been lucky enough. I was the director of a kids camp, and we had a young gentlemen's camp, and we have a young ladies camp, and we would have at times it's like a meshing of those two groups, and I would have some of my ladies being able to do better push-ups than some of my guys. And they were all like, well, she's cheating. She's just rushing through them. It's like, no, she's just better than all of you guys. Like, let's like step up our game because she's out here grinding and you guys are out here trying to like push each other, punch each other, and like play tag.
Boys being boys.
Boys being boys. And then she's over here like murdering push-ups and like running laps around you guys. And you guys are like, wait, what's going on? Yeah. Like, I don't know. There's something that I really enjoyed about training not just like younger ladies, but also older ladies, like or like our adult ladies, right? Like I've always like there's a desire and an understanding of like long-term development. There's not like this ego that's associated with like training where like, well, I want to lift heavy. Like, well, maybe you're not ready to lift heavy, right? Versus the lady who's like, teach me. Yeah. Right? Like, let's learn how to do this correctly. And then, like, if this takes longer, it takes longer. It is what it is. Like, we're going to stay in this for a longer period of time. I prefer it, really. Yeah.
No, I've been lucky enough, like I said, both my sisters they used to beat me up when I was like a kid. Okay. I didn't have brothers growing up, so they were my brothers. They both played sports. My oldest played soccer in college as well. She's a phenomenal athlete. She played her ACL, I think, 2 or 3 times and still got like first team, like All-American, all those things you can think of. And she still can ball out. But again, like I would watch her and I would play with like her. She's about 7 years older than me. And her teammates, like they would push me around. And I was like, I'm lifting right now. And how are you guys stronger than me? And I'm like, these girls are like actually in the weight room in their high school. They had a good coach. And I actually think he's still at the same high school. But I got to like experience that. And I was lucky enough because a lot of people don't get to have that philosophy of like, oh, like, I don't want to be pushed around by, like, a 17-year-old girl when, I'm 11, 12, but I'm 5'11" at that age because guys go through puberty a little bit weirder and later. I was like, I want to lift now. I'm never going to let that happen again. Like, that's not okay. And then I got older, and then I played girls that were fitter than me then. I was like, oh, crap. I was like, I don't want them to be fitter than me. And then I had to do that. And there was always that thing of, like, always chasing actually a girl, and I was never chasing a guy because in my philosophy, like, my sisters, like, set that tone for me. So did my parents. And again, like, we don't care what gender you are in our family. Like, just do the work and that's it. And granted, I was the only one in my family that got addicted to the lifting part of it. But my sisters, they would do their exercises, do their things. And again, my sister was walking a few months after her surgery, like instantly running. Like, it's because she did all the stuff before that. You may get injured, but you'll be fine if you do everything right. And I've been around multiple soccer athletes that have messed up their knees and other things. And if the few that have trained with me, their recovery percentage of coming back was so much quicker. And it's not that I'm a great coach. It's just that if you just do the foundational stuff before and something happens, you can bounce back a lot quicker than you think. It's not the end of the world. And the few that like haven't had a strength program, like it takes them a while. And then the mentality of like, oh crap, I'm going to get injured again. Like you can see it like in their first tackle. Not just girls, like guys. Like if this is their first time getting a serious injury and they're back in the game, they have that second nature to pull back, which makes it then even worse. And I've seen it with lifting as well. I've seen guys I've seen the pec tear completely. And I watch them like 8 months later, like go on bench and then they're just like, nah, I'm good. And they just like instantly drop it. I'm like, that might be worse. Like you got to control it. Like you can't just bail out on a bench like that when you don't have safety bars. Like, but again, it's a mentality of like, oh, I'm feeling it again. I was like, you got to get through that mental barrier. And I think that's like the main thing is like these girls, these guys nowadays, they all look at Instagram and they see these things being done and they want to do it, but like they don't ask why it's being done. And they think that this coach is reputable just because he has this one athlete behind him. It doesn't mean crap. In my opinion, the names of the athletes don't mean a thing. I'd rather have somebody who's undeveloped and develop them as best as I can than have a pro athlete always hit me up. I don't want to deal with pros for the most part because one, you can't have them year round because they're usually in their sport. But two, like they have a mentality of like, oh, I think I can do this on my own type of thing. I'm like, best players in the world have coaches for a reason. Like, don't think that you're better. And again, I don't deal with those athletes. As soon as I see that attitude, I just like, I'm good. But if somebody's like a youth or high school, you can develop them and change their mindset. Pros, you're not changing their mindset. They're like, I've made it. Like I know what I'm doing. So
like actually you have so much more to learn, and there's like so much opportunity here. Like research is continuously changing. There's so much research to support like that recovery time. And so just if you just did those fundamental items and then finally get somebody back after a surgery, because like unfortunately it's gonna like an injury is gonna happen, whether that be an intense surgery like an ACL tear, and it couldn't be as simple as somebody just like rotates around and just the way that the hips are designed, and specifically in a lady versus a male, like that V shape is a little bit more aggressive, and so it creates a little more tension on that ACL. Like it's probable, right?
Yeah.
And so even if it's not that, like you roll an ankle, but then you've already done all this like balancing work, and you've already like worked on your peroneus or your calf, like you've done all this good stuff around that ankle to give it support. By the time you get back into like regular training, like you can make progress really, really quickly. Yeah. I think that there's so much research. I mean, so much research to support that is coming out. Like, come on, like why are we not? It's wild to me. I remember talking. I don't know if you know Ben Adina. He'll come on the podcast here in a couple weeks, but he's I guess he works with a lot of high school programs as well. He's like, I walk into these high school programs and they're not even lifting weights, or they'll run the same program, like not even a linear periodization program, because that would ultimately like change. He's like, they're doing 5 sets of 5 for all 3 movements for 8 weeks in a row during season. And I'm like, what? Dude. It's like, they don't know. And I was like, how do they not? Like, how can you be with so much out there and so much access? How can you still be so oblivious and like ultimately harming your athletes? Like it's such a disservice.
No, I think like the main issue with that is like they might not know, and they might not know what is the right way. That's also the thing, is like, because growing up, 5 sets of 5, that was the only way to get stronger. And then I thankfully again open-minded, and I was like, there's no way that there's one way fits all. I was like, there's got to be other things. And that's, luckily I grew up, you're around probably the same age as me, but like the YouTube era where like things were online a lot more, and I got to research so much more just off like NFL mainly, because that was the main thing that would always show up, and I would try to watch some like soccer training, some powerlifting. It's how I got into conjugate. I'm a big conjugate guy. For people to know, it's like Louis Simmons, who transferred that over from the Russians or Bulgarians back in the day. I always forget. And again, I took that into soccer, and then I had a coach in high school who used to be at the original Phase 1, who I actually ended up working with a few years ago, full circle. He would literally put me in a group of linebackers. He's like, you need to get stronger. He's like, you play soccer, doesn't mean you're a pansy. He's like, you need to do what they're doing. Your weights might be different, but you still need to do the same movements. And again, I just trusted it. I was also the type to where I didn't second guess an adult. Like I grew up with parents that would tell me like, hey, if you're trying to do something and you're asking for help, don't question that help. Like that's pointless. So if you're going to go to this gym and do it, go do it. And I trusted the process, and I ended up, like I said, becoming a stronger soccer player. And then when I would go back to my high school, my weightlifting coach put me in like the lineman group, because I would lift more than them in squats and power cleans, because I also had better technique. I didn't do that little starfish. Granted, when we did the bench day, I was like in like the weak group down here.
You got long arms.
Yeah. Long arms when I played soccer. I didn't care about my upper body. And like everybody's like, want to do curls. I'm like, can I do some squats? And my coach was like, you just did squats. I'm like, I can do more though. Like, but I got lucky enough to where like a coach, like he also treated me, my high school football coach, like just because you're a kicker doesn't mean anything to me. He's like, you and my star quarterback are the same human being. He's like, you start the game literally on the kickoff. He's like, without you, we don't have you. And then lucky enough, I had a college coach that treated me even better like that. He mother effed us all like the same. He did not care. And he was in love with me just because I was the kicker that would always be in the weight room. I brought intensity, and I would run down on tackles. I'm not like most kickers. I like to hit. I was a big boy then. I was like 235, maybe like 8% in college. Like I was solid.
Huge.
Yeah. And all my roommates loved me because they're like, you're not like most kickers. I was like, yeah. I was like, I don't want to be like most kickers. Like I wanted to go down. But the problem was I was the only kicker. So if I got hurt, then we're out of a kicker and punter. So my coach would force me to like not run down on the kickoff, and you'd watch my highlight and I'm just like waiting there. And then if they broke free, I'm like, yeah. And I just like went at them. And I never got one return, thankfully, on me. But also, I was lucky enough to be a quick guy. And I think that's because of all the quick twitch stuff I did as a kid, is I wanted to learn. The only way to get faster, in my opinion, is to train with somebody who's faster. Like, there's that philosophy. And then there's also, like, the science of, like, do the right things as well. But if you're trying to always chase somebody, it's going to make you get that little edge. And no offense to like science, even though I'm big on science, science can't teach that part. Like if I'm next to Noah Lyles and I'm doing sprints, like he's going to make me push a little bit more, obviously, because he's going to be in front of me 100%. But that's going to make my training of that sprint also faster as well. So if I focus on my things and I work with somebody who's better, or learn from somebody who's better, or maybe just has more experience in like their thought philosophy, I'm going to be, in my opinion, better. And like, I used to do that all the time in high school as I was playing rugby, playing like everything I could think of. When I was like, I want to jump higher. I would watch like all my basketball friends. I'm like, how are you doing that? And they wouldn't know because a lot of them were gifted and they were like 6'3" and can naturally dunk. But I would like just look at how they would move. And then I just got obsessed with movement. And I'm lucky it was a good addiction because like there's the route that a lot of kids go, especially boys. Like we all get into that, the bodybuilding phase where we all just want to go to like the high school gym, like right after high school and just do some curls, do some bench. Like I was stuck in that. But again, I was like, I'd rather train the movement than the muscle. And like I said, I wasn't naturally a big dude. I had to work for it. But then I got into like all these other sports and I ended up finding like so many different things out there. And like my big thing, believe it or not, is yoga. I had so many injuries and just unbalances, and the unilaterally wasn't working. My PT therapy wasn't working. So like yoga fixed me up and it still does. I got certified in it just so I can also like learn more. But the myofascial like integration of it is just like every athlete needs. Because one, I think, this is just my opinion, I think there's no athlete in the world that plays like a sport with a ball that wants to stretch. They all might want to lift or they might want to play on the field or the ice rink or whatever it is, but nobody wants to stretch. Even me, some days I'm just like, God, this is going to suck. And I was also, sometimes it is boring because you're just sitting there. But that benefit that you get makes you play better, in my opinion, more than just the movement sometimes. Like you can get away with not going to the gym in season and doing certain things as long as you're taking care of your body and you're playing up to par. There's a lot of pro athletes that are lazy and they're just gifted. But if they don't do the rehab, they're not going to play as well. And those athletes do rehab. They'll rehab more than they even work out. And like I said, and that's in every sport. It's not just football and soccer, like the main ones. But like some guys are naturally gifted. But if they get hurt, they understand they're never going to play again. And it takes one injury away from never playing again.
And that's a lot of time, money, like everything that's just gone all of a sudden.
Yep.
And like I would say at the higher the level, there's probably more of an emphasis on rehab, prehab movements. And like the way we choose accessories is typically like, we're doing this so that you're not getting injured.
Yeah.
We're like, yes, we're doing this maybe so you can get strong in this specific movement pattern, but it's geared so that you don't get injured in game time.
Exactly.
Like I'm going to put you, we're going to do these exact things just so we can reduce that risk, because that's what's going to matter the most. I think rehab, prehab, recovery, I mean, again, research would also show that those are the most important things in somebody's program, especially in season. Like you're asking your body to do so much,
all at once too.
All at once,
like and at a tense level. It's not just like we're just going in just to go in. Like you want to play your game, because when it's game time, everybody has to play 100%. You get no extra lineage of like we're gonna go 75% of the game. Like no, you're balling out. Doesn't matter what sport you are. Like, and if you're not, you're either gonna get subbed out or played out, or you're just gonna lose. And nobody, if you're an athlete, wants to lose. The point of the gym is to fail and lose in the gym, get close to failure, get close to those weird things. If we're trying to like get stronger or work on our fitness, it's not supposed to be easy. But the easier that gets, the easier playing the sport will be. And for the people that don't play sports, you still got to put your body under some stress. Like my biggest philosophy, and I think a lot of coaches agree, is movement is medicine. Doesn't matter what movement that is. Again, I love to throw weights around like that. Makes me feel like I'm still like a manly man sometimes. Granted, it ain't what it used to be, but I still also am just like, I need to do my stretching. I need to do what I was big in the CrossFit world. They called it successories instead of accessories, because those little things make you better. Granted, they call it successories because all they do is like squat, deadlift, clean, and some like muscle ups or like their strength. They don't do like curls as part of a workout. It's always an accessory thing. And there's nothing wrong with that because their sport doesn't require anything else other than those strengths. But problem with that is they have no rotational power. And in my opinion, if you have rotational mobility, rotational power, rotational stretch, like emphasis, you're going to have a lot less injuries. The people that don't rotate, like I've seen more injuries in those sports and in those people. Just like an adult, if they've never played a sport and all they do is are stagnant and they're linear like the whole time, even in their daily life, they're going to have more like nicks and knacks than the average person who's trying to rotate, whether that's thoracic, the lower part, it could be anything you think of. But I was big into that because of my back. And like I said, I started this because of my injuries. And I realized like I can't freaking get out of bed and rotate. Like this is bad. Yeah, I can still kick a ball 70 yards, but I was like, I'm stiff. Like if I have to twist, like I'm screwed. Like, so I understood that like, yeah, God gave me a gift to kick a ball a country mile, but like if I can't like barely get up to that scrimmage of line and then like wait for that ball, and if like it's a bad snap or something, I got to go get it. I was like, I'm screwed. Like, so that's where I learned to like take care of my body, and that like there's not a one size fit all training philosophy. Like sometimes you need to completely change it and go away from the strength aspect and focus on this for a couple weeks, or vice versa. Like I do believe everybody should do some form of functional fitness, like getting your heart rate up. It definitely needs to happen. And I don't like the marathon runners that never do any strength, or like the powerlifters that never do any cardio or fitness or VO2. Like I hate this term hybrid, but I especially hate the term hybrid athlete. If you're an athlete, you're already doing both. But that's where I think the stigma of those sports like powerlifting, sprints, and stuff like that, a lot of them don't do those other things as well. The top in the world do. Noah Lyles, like all the Jamaican sprinters, they're lifting, they're doing other things, like, and that's what makes them the best. And those top powerlifters and top strongmen, I watch classes of like Brian Shaw, like in CrossFit classes, and he's dead. But again, the weight volume for him is nothing. But if he can just get through it, he's good. So his VO2 needs to be up because he has to lift multiple times. So I mean, it's those pro athletes that understand like you need to start doing some other things, and that's going to make your sport actually a little bit better, even if it's just a little bit. Like I'm a big believer, if you're an athlete, sprint should be over a lot of things, like actual sprinting, not just sprint mechanics and biomechanics, like actually doing the sprint itself and doing it with shorter rest and building up that lactic power and lactic acid threshold. Like that is a huge difference on just like performance in your sport. Because most sports for the most part are like 80 minutes plus. Like you might have quarters and periods, but most sports are close to an hour plus. So you need to be able to withstand that. Your first 5 minutes should be the same as your last 5 minutes if you can. Otherwise, like, you're going to fade off. So that's why like my coaches used to call like finishers like extra time. He's like, well, everybody else is like done in the fourth quarter or the 90th minute. He's like, that's what these finishers are. He's like, you're dead right now. He's like, you got to find that second win. And he's like, if you don't, you lose. And I had this coach just beat it into me. He's like, always do something with the finisher in high school. And in my opinion, now looking back, it's a little dumb way to train, like doing sprints at the end and doing all that. But again, like sometimes in a game, like you might have to do that. And mentally, it's more of that type of battle. I think that's why he was doing it. He's a great coach. Like I said, he still coaches pro. I won't like name everybody. He's like coaching like top in the world of boxing and MMA, like NFL. He's coaching them still. He did it because like he knew us kids were mentally weak. And it wasn't going to harm us because we weren't doing anything excessive. He was just like, you guys need to like buckle up right now. And we were dying, but in a good way, and come up to us, knuckle bump us all, see you here tomorrow. And we're like, crap, like this is going to suck. Because when he would say that and he wouldn't talk to us, we're like, it's going to be worse the next day. So, but again, like I've taken that philosophy into how I train, but, all my guys were old school guys. They didn't have like a nice mentality of like leaving that gym with like a smile or some good emphasis. And it sounds cliche, but like you should have fun in there.
You should definitely still have fun. I remember times where I remember one specific time where we're South Texas. It's hot as shit. We're on the track. I think we had just finished doing weights and like, all right, everybody outside. We're going to go sprint. And I was like, what? Like, I'm fucking dying.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean we're going outside? And we did like 200-meter sprints for probably not very long, but it felt like
It felt like an hour, of course. Yeah. Especially if you're in Texas.
Yeah, it was. I remember we had like 100 days in a row of 100 plus, and we're at like 80% humidity. Like, yes, like Las Vegas is hot.
Humidity is different.
Humidity is it's just different. Like both of them are terrible. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I kind of miss humidity. Either way. I at that point I remember being so frustrated, and I don't think that it was very necessarily intelligent to do, but at the same time there's like a mental battle that's happening. Like, are you still going to show up? Are you still going to work hard? Like, I'm telling you to do this thing. Are you just going to bail and quit, or are you going to be out here and you're going to work?
Yeah.
And so when it comes time to it, do you have that extra push? And I think that's ultimately what that teaches. So I think that yes, like the science would say, like physiologically that's not great, but I think that there is something psychologically that's happening whenever you do put that athlete through that thing, especially if they haven't experienced like something very hard, right? Like, yeah, the workout's kind of hard, but then it's still like within this comfort zone, and then you like really get outside of that comfort zone kind of aggressively. You're like, okay, like this is what my body can actually do. This is what my brain can actually do. This is what I can tolerate. Like I'm training a level of grit. Like there's so many pros there. You said something that like really piqued my interest, and then I forgot. But like, I love your style of training. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and yes, so I think everybody should sprint, and I want to hear more about how you program that. When I was powerlifting, I remember I like went outside to like run to the car because it was raining, and it was like at this point I was already competing for Team USA. I remember running to the car, running to the hotel, whatever it was, and I got to the spot, and I was like, I'm dying. Like, I can't breathe, dude. Like, yeah, I can squat 700, but I can't run 50 meters. Like, what the fuck is going on? And then at that point is when I started introducing more sprints to my program. And then my squat started to move. My deadlift starts to move. My bench starts to move. I'm feeling better. Like, I'm moving better. Like, there's so many pros to the sprinting world. And then rotational force was another one. So, like especially as a powerlifter, we were all like we're staying very tight, right? That's the whole jam. But like for daily life, and also I like to say, you know, most books will say like there's 4 fundamental movements, right? There's the squat, the hinge, the push, and the squat, the push, the hinge, and the pull. And I want to add the rotation to the 5th, because all books like NASM, CSCS, like whatever you read, it always focuses on those 4.
Yeah.
But I think the 5th one that's missing from that fundamental movement is going to be rotation.
Yeah.
Like, why are we not like that's such a big part of our life, you know?
Yeah.
So how do you program sprints? Sorry.
So I mean, it depends on the athlete and their experience. I hate saying the sport because I don't do sport specific. Again, I try to get around that term of battling these soccer guys. I always pick on soccer, because there's these soccer strength coaches out there that are like, oh, like it's soccer specific movement. I was like, what is it? It's like Bulgarian split squat. I was like, oh, so NFL running backs ain't doing Bulgarian split squats? I was like, sprinters aren't? I was like, what are you talking about? Sport specific. There's no such thing as sport specific like movement. It might be better for them, but it's not just they're the only ones doing it and it's going to make them way better. And no offense, soccer players should not be doing like leg extensions and all that crap. They're kicking a ball 100 times, like, within 30 minutes. And if they're shooting, they're kicking it with force and velocity. So it's not your quads that make you kick the ball harder. It's like your hip flexors and your groin. And I got to understand this really young, that I was naturally a quick kid. I wasn't naturally strong at all. Like that skip from my dad to me, like my dad's 77, he can still hit 315 on like bench like it's nothing.
Damn.
Yeah, just natural big Italian dude just goes. Me, no. Like not even close, but I was quick as hell. And then like the more I would integrate like fitness with that quickness and add force behind it, I understood that like, oh, let me just go out there and just do some sprints. Cause one, I didn't want to run long because like I got bored. And we didn't have like headphones like that back in the day where you can distract yourself. If I went to a track, I run 2 laps, I'm like, I want to stop just because I'm bored. It's not even fitness. But sprints, you're short and then you're like, okay, I got crap. 5 seconds, and now I got to go again. And then you do it again. And then that type of burn got me addicted to it. So I started research like sprinting and how these athletes that are like offensive linemen, 350 plus pounds, can run faster than me. And that pissed me off. I was like, that's not okay. I was like, even though I was like 16 at the time, I was like, that's not okay. So I understand like velocity and like speed and force. And I had a coach tell me, he's like, one is pretty much like how hard you're going to hit the wall. The other one's how far you're going to take that wall. He's like, which one do you want to be? And I was like, I want to take that wall and go. I was like, I don't want to hit it faster. I was like, there's always going to be somebody quicker in some aspect. But he was like, as far as grabbing somebody and going, he's like, that's a different type of force that you can bring. And I would try to like ask my track coach. I didn't do track like that, we had a track coach in high school. I was like, can you teach me how to like get off the blocks properly and give me some acceleration? I was like, I don't care so much about the technique. I wasn't trying to be some sprinter, but I was like, that's going to help me because in my stride, I'm fine. But I was like, that extra push to get me sprinting, I was like, I could be better at. And I feel like that's that same motion is similar to a kick. I just wanted to kick a ball harder. That's all I cared about. Like, again, I never thought I was going to play football, but I was a center defender. I wanted to boot the crap, whether it's the ball or the guy. Neither are going to pass me at the same time. I was a physical guy. So I started to incorporate sprints before pretty much like every other day in high school. And then I started to learn that like track guys aren't sprinting every single day. Like they break it up. And when they do sprint, it's quality, like as hell. And that's a max effort sprint. Like they're really big on percentages of like their effort too. I thought it was just a max sprint every time. Maybe we're doing some 50 repeats. It's not always 100% in those 50s. So it wasn't until college that I had a strength coach who played like 7 years in the NFL, who was so strong, like disgustingly strong, to where like he would not have pads on and he would throw our offensive linemen around while they're doing one-on-one drills. And I'm like, I need to ask this guy questions. Because he loved me, that I was like the kicker that would lift. He's like, why is my kicker stronger than my linebackers type of thing? And then he was like, why is my kicker faster than some of my wide receivers? Like I was lucky enough to run a 4.55. Like I was decently quick for my size, but I understood that like I'm not strong, and I don't think I'll ever will be. I was just powerful and quick. And I think it's because my central nervous system and the sprints that I incorporated gave me that aspect. And I think if you notice a lot of the top athletes nowadays, if you look at their youth development, ask them what they used to always do or the positions they played, it's those quick twitch things. And it's never like an opposite answer, like, oh, I did so much strength training as a kid and speed mechanics. They were doing basic hill sprints, some resistance, some like basic unilateral stuff and biomechanics. Like it was so simple. And now how I program that with my, let's just say my MLS Next Academy, the kind of what you were like watching me do when we were at the gym. It was all about like, what are they bad at? Because I know they're all naturally weak hip flexors. They're naturally weak in their upper body because they've never really done even push-ups or pull-ups. But I was like, what can make them better on the field? And I don't really have an off season to get them stronger. And no offense as a kid, if you incorporate any type of fitness or strength, they're going to get stronger. There's no such thing as a strength cycle for a 12-year-old. He's 12 years old. Like, just got to let him move.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents need to understand that as well. That's the thing with my gym is I tell parents straightforward, like I just want him to kick harder. I was like, he's 8. I like let him just play.
He's not even like moderately developed.
Yeah. He still runs like a giraffe got tranquilized. Like, but that's the problem is like people think that like if you lift young, it's going to do this. And then there's also those people who are like, don't lift young because it's going to like stunt your growth. I'm like, I'm 6'2". Doesn't do that if you do it right. And also I was like, if you do it wrong and you do these certain things, it may. I was like, but I don't believe that like if you do it right, it's going to do any of that. I was like, I'm a prime example of that. And a lot of other guys out there. But so with them, I usually do in-season sprint mechanics, I would say about once a week, really. Granted, we do our sprint emphasis. So I got about an hour with each one of my groups. We try to split them up into like, kind of like if you're like in a weight room, like in college, like group 1A is going to be doing this because you're similar. That's kind of how we do it with the academy. And this is kind of how I also do it if I have like a one-on-one or small group. But for them, it's easier because I have them every single day. I've developed them. You were there when I was like doing test stuff, like basic test stuff, which a lot of soccer coaches ripped us up about. And then I threw up so much science behind them and none of them replied. But sprint mechanics were like once a day, maybe on like a Tuesday, because it's their lower impact day. And I'm trying to get them moving again. Wednesday's more of that fitness type thing. So they might have some sprint movements or some more so agility, but lower impact because they play 3-4 games a weekend that we were talking about. Some of them might not play at all. It doesn't mean I'm going to increase that load that week. Like they're playing so many games throughout the year that like, I'm not going to increase it. I have it structured to where like we will always decrease if anything. I'm never going to be like, oh, you have nothing for 2 weeks. Like, let's just bump it up. That's not going to, the kid's not going to get stronger or fitter in 2 weeks, let alone the athlete in general. So for a lot of them, like we do have a full like sprint day, like where it's like 30 minutes of like breaking it down, working on technique, like once a month, like we go hard for sure.
That's wild.
Off season, it's a little bit different. I didn't get them that long this off season. But in reality, it's that sprint with some fitness, some like sled pushes, some like other things of like lactic fatigue and like that, adding that into it, because that one mentally, as we talked about, gives that kid that confidence of like, this is a temporary feeling. And I was like, and imagine if you're like playing a soccer game and like you got to sprint to that ball, you're just going to stop sprinting. Like it burns, like you're going to go. And like being able to coach that and make them understand that, they love it. And then also I throw myself in there too. So I'm lucky enough where I can still do demos. So I'll sit there and be like, this is how it's going to look. And I'll go full on. And they just look at me like in awe. I'm like, guys, I was like, I'm slow. Like I'm an old man now. Like you guys think I'm awesome. I was like, but I'm not. I was like, it just looks like that because you guys are still developing. I was like, all you have to do is like sprint. I was like, it seems simple, right? I was like, how many times do you do this in a game? And then I always do. I was like, how many times do we do it today? They're like, oh, about like 10 reps. I'm like, how many do you think you do in a game? Like, and how many do you think you do in a game without like noticing it and then chasing a ball also? And then also adding the footwork in. I was like, also somebody's pushing you. I was like, so when we get into this gym, my guy, like they're like clockwork. Like they know where to focus. Like, and they have their kids. It's like herding blind cats sometimes. It's fun. I want them to have fun, but if they like mess around, like I lock it down, which they don't. But when we do the sprints and we do everything, I don't even have to say anything. Like they can warm them. I've taught them how to like, I put them through warm-ups where like, hey, we're going to do a lot of jumps today. So in this dynamic, I was like, I'm gonna do the first 5 minutes. I was like, and I was like, you're captain, you do the rest. And I watched them. And then they like teach each other things. They like talk to each other. They're like, oh no, we already did those. We got to do these now. And like, they understand how to warm up. They understand like what we're about to get into, how to do that at a young age. So like, I'm like, hey, we're going to be doing a lot of sprints today. So really open those up, hip flexors, make these ankles really stiff on these pogos, make sure they're like primed and ready, guys. And they know what I'm saying now.
You're changing those kids' lives. I mean, like, I think that's the coolest part about being a coach for the youth athlete. Like, you have such an opportunity to leave such an impression that can change that kid's life forever, and like how they perceive success and how they work and their true understanding of grit. Like you are allowing them, you're giving them a space to develop physically and mentally so that they will achieve success in anything that they do.
Yeah.
It's fucking amazingly beautiful. I think that's the coolest thing about training youth athletes.
Yeah.
So impressionable.
It takes, they drain you.
They
First
do.
off, whether it's a good day or bad day, they suck the life out of you because they want so much. Like they're just hyped up. But here's like a thing that like a lot of coaches don't touch up on is like the emotional aspect, like the psychological emotional aspect. Like this might be the only hour that this kid like has freedom. Like, yeah, they're playing, but like when I watch them play their sport or like the coach, and like they have phenomenal soccer coaches, they have a great teacher, they got great everything, but they're always pushed. And they're not allowed to fail in those aspects because they're trying to go somewhere. I'm the opposite. Like I'm like, guys, I was like, this is gonna burn. I've made some kids cry, respectively, like in a workout, like, and they've actually cussed at me. I've had like 10-year-olds like be like, what the, like when they're done, like they're pushing a sled, and they fall to the floor, and like there's a tear, and they're like, I hate you. And I'm just like, I love you too. I was like, and again, it's my energy, but like the next day they're just like, all right, let's go. They're like, okay, that was nothing now. Like I always tell them like, it's going to be a hard day. And I'm straightforward with my kids. And I think that's why they like me. And I think that's why we have a great relationship, because I'm not like a normal strength coach. I talk to them like how I would talk to my pro athletes that I coach. But I always want them to like understand, like, you can have fun. You can get those endorphins going. And then when it's time to turn it on, you flip that switch and then you flip it off. Like flip it off when you get in this gym. Like have fun, guys, focus. Because when they go play soccer, it's like, oh, it's a shit pass. Like, we got to do better. Oh, like, we need to get our grades up. We need to do this. With me, I'm just like, just try. I was like, every day you're going to feel, because you might have like a game where like you took a knock on the weekend and your body is a little sore. Like, and we might have to scale something. We change it. They come up to me. They're like, hey, this is hurting. And I'm like, cool, we'll do this instead. They communicate with me so well now, which I love, because they understand like I'm trying to get them to the next level and keep them healthy. But the emphasis of like them trusting me, one, was the hardest thing, because when I took over, it wasn't the best ran program as far as strength stuff. We had a lot of kids injured, and that was why I didn't want to deal with it, because it was mid-season. Eventually, I got tucked into it, and I was like, new sheriff's in town. Like, this is how it's going to go. First 2 weeks, they hated me because they thought I was just some like dick. I've never yelled at an athlete, and nobody believes me on that, like pro or young. I've never let's go, let's pick it up. I'm just like, come on. Like, you should, like, if you don't want to do it, like, you're on your own then. Like, and I've learned that. Like, I had a coach that yelled at me and a coach that didn't. And the coach that didn't, like, I learned so much more from him. Because it wasn't just like a dude, just shut up. But he was just like, listen, you're here to get better. And if I have to tell you to try to go harder, he's like, I can't teach that. He's like, you should want to go harder. And these guys, like, and girls, some of them are girls, they're phenomenal. Like, they blow my mind. It's not just them, like the college girls that I have that come back from soccer, and like even my NFL guys and UFL guys, like, they know the tone I bring, and they know that, like, I want them to enjoy every process with me. Like, it's, of course, I want to see them grow, but I'm like, guys, when you're done with this, like, I want you to always be like, yo, you were a positive guy in my life, because I had a lot of shit coaches, as I'm sure you did. And if you play a sport, you definitely have more shit coaches than a strength coach. Like, you've had those coaches that are like, oh, I don't like you because, like, your mom annoys me, so you're not going to play, that type of thing. Weights do not care what skin color you are, doesn't care what age you are, gender. 100 pounds is 100 pounds, 400 pounds is 400 pounds. A sprint up a hill is a sprint up a hill. It does not care. So, and they understand that I don't play favoritism. I don't, even if I don't like a kid or a person, if I'm willing to coach them, like, I'm giving them everything that I would give that person. Like, I can put my emotional side away and bring that energy for them, because, again, that an hour can change their life. Like, they might go through some shit at home. They might, again, have so much stress just from school. They might go through a breakup and their world's falling down. That hour of working out that they don't want to do might be that release that they don't understand is a release. And again, like, I love telling these kids, like, hey, today's going to suck. And they just look at me, and they're dead quiet in the warm up when I say those days. And then when we're done, I'm like, wasn't that bad? They're like, like, just gasping for air. I'm like, go stretch for 10 minutes. You guys know how to foam roll. I've taught them all how to foam roll. I'm like, I've literally sat down for 2 hours with everybody, and I gave them all a foam roll. I was like, this is what we're going to do if your calf's sore in this way. This is how you're going to do it. So if you travel, you can never say you're sore. I was like, screw your teammates. I'm worried about you guys. Like, I don't care what your teammates are doing. You guys need to play at the best level, and you guys need to stay injury-free. I was like, my job is to keep you injury-free. That is it. I was like, and I also care because you guys are all good kids, and they are all good kids. And like I said, they love challenging. If you tell a kid, like, oh, we're going to challenge, and, like, loser has to do burpees, oh, they're all on. They don't screw around.
Oh yeah, that definitely works. We used to, 100%. There's very, very quickly people, and then I think the big part is following through with that statement, because I would have kids that were like, he's not actually going to make us do that, right? Oh. And then all of a sudden, like, the first time that it happens, as soon as it happens, okay, like, we're 10 burpees or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh wait, like, seriously? He's like,
yep.
Yeah, seriously, like, let's go now, everybody. And I'm like, oh shit. And then after that, the attitude changes forever.
Oh yeah.
And, like, there's an understanding whenever something is said, this is the reality. We're not playing games. You're not gonna like, I'm not your parent, or you're gonna whine at me. And it's like, no, you're doing the 10 reps. Like, you can.
I'll stay here all day.
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
I'll wait.
We will wait until your parents come here. I will tell them, like, hey, they have to do the 10 reps, and then they will be like, okay, well then wait, like, go. Like, it was, I loved setting that tone. What is the ideal environment for you to train an athlete in?
Honestly, like, I think for me, I try to not think like how I wanted to train, because I was so solo. I still do so many workouts by myself. And it's not that I want to be like a cat in a room, like, cornered. Like, I don't mind working out with people, but sometimes, like, I just don't like people's energy. So my ideal environment was always just being by myself, putting in the work, didn't care if anybody was there or not. And that sounds so cliche, like, everybody's doing that. I get everybody's doing that, but, like, for me mentally, like, it made me think of, like, what I'm doing and how I can actually change my mindset. And when I would work out with my friends, like we all did in high school, it ended up changing to where, like, I don't mind this group environment as long as the tone is set by everybody. So when I get my athletes, let's just forget the MLS side. Like, I get, like, my college or my pro guys, like, first thing I do is, like, try to ask them how they're doing. Like that. And I ask myself, like, before I work out, I'm like, all right, how are we feeling today? And as I'm warming up, I'm like, oof, slept on my back wrong. It's a little, like, tight. Like, and I talk to myself in a way. Like, in my opinion, you're your worst enemy, but you're your best friend. And again, if you give that energy out there, other people in your group are going to feel it, whether you're showing it or not. I'm a big believer in energy. So if you bring shit energy into any environment, it's going to be a shit workout. Doesn't matter who you are. Even if it's the slightest, it's going to get absorbed. So I try to ask them that. And then the next thing is like, I try to literally joke. I try to like, cause that one, it flips their switch of like, oh God, we're coming in for a workout, even if they want to be there or not. Like the joke is just like distracting them. It's like a horse with carrots. Like you just, if you put a carrot in front of the horse and you just keep, he's going to keep walking until like he gets it. It's the same thing there. And then you slowly try to segue it into like, all right, time to go. I was like, let's warm up. This is what we're doing today. And then you set that tone. And then literally after that first set of like warm up, like I literally look at all of them. I'm like, now's when it gets fun. I was like, it should never be easy. Even the easier days, there's going to be some challenges. So I think being honest with what we're about to do, including myself, where I did a workout the other day that my friend happened to be like in the gym watching me towards the end. I was on the floor gasping for air. And I had to talk to myself like, this is going to kill you in many ways. I was like, and it's literally just you. So you got to hype yourself up, to where I got pissed off because in one of the reps, I took a little bit longer to rest. That was just like my old self of just like, I was like, oh, I'm too old for this right now. I was like, oh, I don't like the song. I was just something. And I went over to change it and I was like, I just took 30 extra seconds. So I was like, now you're going to finish with some extra burpees and sprints. So like, granted, I can do that for myself, but for them, I don't want them to ever think that, because I know they won't be willing to do that. A lot of them, a lot of people, let alone athletes, are not willing to just be like, do their own punishment. And again, I had coaches, like I said, make me do those burpees. Like if you played football, if anybody out there ever heard get him going or get him chopping, you're like, shit. And you're there for 30 minutes just tapping your feet down to the ground.
Man makers.
Dude, and it wasn't fun. That was the only thing I got to do with the football team, was always conditioning, which I hated. But again, like it was punishment. If one person went down, their whole team goes down. And to an extent, I believe in that. And a lot of things that I do, I like to stay with performance based. I don't like to do like coach a full team. If it is team, it's going to be small group team to where I can detail them a little bit more because everybody's different. Even if like, let's just say I know for a fact you don't bench 200 pounds, you bench more. But let's just say you bench 200, I bench 200. We're still going to move and develop differently. Doesn't matter if our maxes are the same or this is the same. Like we still need different things. And that goes with like how you talk to that kid or that person. So my opinion, trying to answering it in an elevator pitch, is bring good energy of like how you're going to talk to them and what's in front of you, because science does not tell you that. You can read every book in the world, but nothing experiences anything that's in front of you. And that's the hardest thing as a coach, is learning which one is the right way, which one's the wrong way, and what tools you have in your bag. And I'm sure you've made mistakes just like I have. I've said certain things to like kids that I'm just like, oh, like that might have gone wrong in their head. I might not have said it the right way, but obviously once it's done, it's done. You just got to change it up. But the thing is like, you want to set that tone and be like, hey, I might be the only positive coach this kid does have. Like he might go pro, but if he like gets interview in the Hall of Fame and he says my name, like, I'm just like, that's awesome. I was like, cause I have those coaches. I got 4 coaches that I'll never forget that changed my life. And they'll never understand like what they did to me at the right time in that life, like how they talked to me. 2 were football, 2 were soccer. I've had plenty of other good coaches, but they set the tone immediately. And the energy and environment that they gave me was just, and they were all different. Like that football coach, he was like, we're in here to fucking work. It was that simple. Like he was just, and he didn't yell. Like he just did not care. He's like, if you're on my team, you're in here to work. He's like, I don't care if you fail. He's like, just try. He's like, if you do that, I will never be mad. He's like, if you half-ass it, I'm out. But yeah, so I mean, it just depends on like who's in front of you, I think. But yeah.
I have one coach, Coach Marty Chilad, that I will never forget. Coach Marty.
We're doing shout outs. I can do that too. Right.
Yeah, hell yeah. You can do
Okay.
shout outs. Fuck yeah. He was our D-line coach. I played on D-line. I wasn't a star. I wasn't very good at all. But I played D-line as a defensive end. And at the beginning of every practice and at the end of every practice, we would always do multiple rounds of the ladder. He's like, I don't care what everybody else is doing out here. We're going to be the best. We're going to have the best footwork out of anybody else. Yeah. Better than receivers, better than your quarterbacks. It doesn't matter. We're going to have the best footwork. And so we would close out the whatever, like we were the Yellow Jackets. So they do the breakout at the very end. Yeah. They have their team meeting. And then immediately, all right, ladder. and all of us would have to like go up there, and sometimes it was like, fuck, why? Like, I just want to go home.
Yeah,
It's been such a
seriously.
long day. Like it's 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are we doing? And it was just that discipline, that dedication every single time. And he never yelled. He didn't really ever talk. He was such a quiet human being. He was like, his thing was always like, he would always like do this like this outward like this extreme exhale, like kind of as a laugh.
Yeah.
And it was like a joke between everybody. He would kind of smile every once in a while, but that was about it.
Yeah.
And he was also our powerlifting coach. And he was just like, you're gonna go be a powerlifter. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. He was like, be here Saturday in the morning and we're going. And I was like, I don't know. Okay. Like, I was just excited to get like a free lunch and free breakfast, you know, like, fuck yeah.
As a kid, that's gold.
Yeah, dude. Saturday mornings, like going as a bus. I kind of miss the yellow buses for whatever reason, but like that environment, you show up in the early morning and everyone else is asleep. You get into the bus and you're like jamming out to music, maybe eating a little bit, and you're on your way to a meet. Like that experience, that mentality is just, there's nothing like it, man. It's so refreshing, so motivating, but it's also so still and like so peaceful all at the same time. I will never, like, I have multiple of those coaches, but like I remember that coach specifically, Coach Madi, that was just fucking like an insane human being. That was also an amazing human.
Dude, I don't think coaches don't get a lot of recognition. Even the good ones, like even if they do just a simple like when you, especially if like you revisit them. My high school coach, when I revisited him after my first NFL workout. One, I didn't even tell him like I got a workout. Like nobody, I fell off the earth. I wasn't big on social media. I posted once that I got a workout, then all of a sudden had all these friends, which is why I stopped posting when I had my workout. So I fell off the earth. I showed up, gave him the ball that I got from like the camp, and he just like looked at me, and I was like, dude, if you never picked me up like and forced me to be the kicker, I was like, and you also treated me like everybody else, I was like, I probably wouldn't have tried it 2 more years. I was just trying to get a free ride. I didn't want to pay for crap in college. Like, I was like, you literally like are the main reason why I've made it this far. And like I said, and then my college coach, like day one, like I told him, he sat there and he did a school visit with me. He walked around the whole campus with me, not like a group. I did it like a visit just to see it. He literally took time out of his day. The head coach of the football team, Dave Hoover. I'll shout him out.
There you go.
We called him AKA Daddy. That was like, he's a little bald man, but man, this dude, he coached everywhere you can think of. He coached some of the GOATs, and he was in Victorville, out of all places, to retire. And he literally walked around everything with me the whole time. And I literally looked at my mom. I was like, I'm going to be fine. I was like, this man is like, if he's treating me like this, I was like, one, the quarterback might be getting like star treatment, but I was like, I just expected him to be like, this is this later. Day one from the practice, he set the tone with me. He was like, listen, he's like, whatever you need, tell me. He's like, you want to be in the weight room earlier? He was like, go in the weight room. He's like, I don't care. He's like, you just can't hit in the Oklahomas anymore. You can't do this. He's like, you're our only kicker because we were supposed to have other ones. He's like, son, if you get hurt, he's like, I will be pissed. He's like, not because we don't like have a kicker or punter. He was like, you genuinely are good at what you do and you care. He's like, you don't leave the practice early like most kickers do, which I hate. He's like, you'll stay there. You'll go in the drill and try to be there when the offensive lineman guys would go. I'd be the quarterback. I was like, I just want to do something. Because I'm a big believer in the team is better than anything else. And my teammates knew really early that I wasn't like most kickers. Like I said, like I set the tone out of them. I wasn't getting shit talked from any of them, which most kickers and punters do. I roomed with all offensive linemen. So I was the smallest guy in my house. So I also had I had something to prove. And like I said, those coaches let me be around that environment growing up to where it was easy for me. And they're still some of my best friends. Still, like, they come to me for training now, which is hilarious. Because they always used to make fun of me, like, why is our kicker as strong as us? And now that like I specialize with it, they're just like, this is like funny that like a kicker is coaching like NFL guys that are like linebackers and linemen and MLS guys. They're like I just wouldn't think that out of all positions. But again, like it's just like, don't look at what's in front of you and be like, oh, like this is who that person's going to be. That coach can develop that person without even knowing it. And it makes such a positive change, just like a teacher. But in my opinion, coaches and athletes, like they could make the best businesses in the world if they just cared. Like with the discipline that we put in and the energy, especially coaches specifically, because most athletes become coaches when they're done. That energy that you bring, like it's unstoppable. And I don't think coaches understand that. Like you have one bad day, it can mess up that kid, and like you can't have a bad day. Like you may, but like that one bad day, that kid might just be all into you, and then he's just like, oh, I don't like this coach anymore. You say one bad thing and that kid's done with you.
Yeah.
Like it's that stressful.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful kind of place to stop. A quick, like a 2-sentence word of advice to the camera, if you don't mind, and then we're going to end off on that.
Train the movement, not the muscle, and love what you're doing, honestly. Because if you don't, it's going to kill you in the long run.
Thank you. Love you. Thanks, man.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it.